So thank you for watching our first fireside chat today. We're honored to have Lieutenant General West here join us and continue our mission of Connect, Inspire, Lead. Lieutenant General West, as many of you know, is the Surgeon General of the Army and also the commander of the U.S. Army MedCom. Ma'am, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely, it's my honor to do it, especially who I get to talk to. So this is great. Thanks.
So I want to start off, ma'am, by you're the highest ranking West Point woman that we've ever had. How has mentorship shaped your path?
Well, I got to tell you, mentorship has been extremely important to shaping my path. I would not be where I am today without mentors of all types that really took a chance on directly mentoring me, some indirectly, and there are probably others who I don't even know in the background that were rooting for me and then helping shape my career. And so it's been very very important.
Can you share an example of a woman who lifted you up throughout your career?
I can. So I'll start with, when we think of mentors, we think of kind of the military, kind of official things. But my mom, starting right there, my mom was an awesome mentor just by her example. My older sisters were great mentors because they were kind of trendsetters and leading edge in their own right because three of them were WACs, so they joined the Women's Army Corps back in the late 60s, early 70s when that really wasn't a typical career path for women. I know women have been serving, since we've had a nation, but in the numbers and really starting the path where they integrated. So I had three sisters in the Women's Army Corps, one sister that was in the Air Force, so she was a WAF, and then the sister that's the next oldest to me was entering the service just as they were starting to integrate women with the male soldiers in the Navy. And so she joined and stayed for 31 years, and so she ended up retiring as a Master Chief Petty Officer. So she was awesome. And those of you who know the Navy, Master Chiefs don't play, and so they're really rough and tough. And so she really just what she had to go through in the 70s. I mean, she joined in '73. So just in the family, I had a good set of mentors, and so those were some really strong women there, and my brothers too. And so that's starting out. Some women I think that really. I think at West Point especially, I can name two, and one of them was Pat Walker. Her name was Priscilla Walker back then, but Pat Walker, I forget her name now. Pat Locke, yeah. So she was class of '80, and I used to see her, and so it was not necessarily directly mentoring. I would have because back then as a plebe, you really couldn't have a lot of interface, but I would just see her walking around, and what an inspiration right there. And the other one was Ann Fields, or Ann McDonald, who's the first general officer. So I remember seeing her there, just all the women in the class of '80 and '81 that were ahead of us, just either directly mentoring us or just by their example and their grit that they made it through were there. And then one that really, that she ended up going to the medical field, we were on the track team together, and that was Terry Tepper, who was then Terry Walter. She actually commanded at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, at the hospital there right before me, so we actually changed commands. In fact, there was an all-female change of command, so the regional commander was Major General Holly Boland. She was the outgoing commander, and I was the incoming commander, so all three, I think that was the first time ever where the regional commander and the two in and outgoing were female officers. And so I had a chance to talk with her more when we were on the track team together. And she was just really awesome inspiration, one of those Renaissance women. Even now she's like an Olympic, skater, for adult females. She did the decathlon, so she was, really awesome.
Yeah.
And so those were some that just at West Point really mentored me and gave me the confidence to say I can do that as well.
Ma'am, you mentioned your brothers, and I know your dad also served. How have you helped to encourage men to mentor women throughout your career?
I think it's one where, just by example. And I always tell people that mentors come in all shapes, sizes, sexes, colors, because you never know who can, who has something to teach you. So a lot of times we want to seek out people who look like us, which is important, because you have to feel that you can. Others that know what you've gone through and know what it's like to be in your shoes have made it. But I also tell them there's a lot of others that you can that you need to choose as mentors. And I always tell the story, I would have missed out on one of the best mentors that I ever had, and who's still a friend to this day, because he was a self-proclaimed, I mean, this is him saying it, redneck from Alabama. And so when I first met him, I'm like, good Lord, I probably need to avoid him because he probably doesn't like blacks, doesn't like women in the military, doesn't like, I had all these preconceived notions, just because of where he was from. And come to find out, his wife was an Army aviator. So that through that whole thing, didn't like women in the military out, and he, again, taught me a lot about being an officer. He taught me how to write an OER support form, taught me how to do things in the military fashion. He wasn't a medical person either. So here he was, didn't look anything like me, was not even in my same career field, but was able to teach me about, develop me as an officer. And so if I had just kind of kept my distance and, avoided that person, then I would have missed out on a lot of, I think, great development as an officer of who I am today. I probably wouldn't be where I am today just because of the lessons of how to maneuver in the, not just the medical environment, but, at the kind of getting at the strategic levels in the military. So I would encourage, and so that part I encourage folks to seek out, and then I also encourage men, don't just, again, look to people like yourselves, because that's the human nature. You gravitate towards what's comfortable. And so I encourage them, don't be afraid, because people are always worried, well, will people think I'm hitting on them, or they think this. So I was like, no, just approach them professionally, and if you see promise in that person, or if you see some things that maybe could help them be a better officer or person or leader, whatever the case may be, to really make the effort to reach out, because the opposite may not be, especially if it's juniors sometimes are more reticent to reach out to seniors because it's just just uncomfortable. So really encouraging those to more senior reaching out to all types of individuals, kind of like the officer reached out to me.
So in preparation for this, we reached out to the West Point Women's Facebook group and crowdsourced some questions. So coming up, I will ask you some of those. One question, very common in our society today, is talking about work-life balance. So in a recent TV interview, you gave advice to cadets that said, believe that you can and don't take yourself out of the race before you start running. And you talked about as a cadet applying to medical school, you almost did that to yourself. I think that's great advice no matter where you're at in life. Yeah. So how do you currently run the race at work, at home, in your community? How do you do it all?
You don't want to know that. Well, some things, we talk about balance, but there are some things you just have, it's like a prioritization. It's kind of like your UFR list, 1 to N, right? Some things not going to make the cut, and it's going to be either, resource next year or not at all. And so it's kind of one of those, it really is a prioritization. And you just have to, realize you cannot do it all. Because sometimes there's this myth that you should be able to do a little bit of this, a little bit of this. If you do, you can run yourself ragged, and then you also get frustrated because you think you should be able to do all of this. And if you just count the number of hours in the day, I always tell my team, and it's like, man, if we get you anything, yeah, about 3 or 4 more hours per day. And it's like, I can't help you. Then it's like, then really, we just have to slog through it. So I think setting realistic expectations of yourself, and then just realize, hey, something is not going to make it today. I was warped at West Point because, I couldn't leave the house without making up my bed every day for years and years. But then after a while, you just have to let it go, right? Once you have kids, lining up, your stuff in height order. When you've got little ones running around, you have to sometimes just let things go. Otherwise, you go crazy. And like if you saw my desk now, you wouldn't think that I'm that type A because, so you just have to realize what is important right now. And what can I let go? And then just really let it go. You can't keep, look back at it because otherwise you'll really drive yourself crazy. So I think having the balance is being realistic. And then also, if it's something that you really want to do and you just can't at the time, then say, okay, I'm going to get to it later. But what do I need to do right now? What's the proverbial 5-meter target that's going to get us? And then having support system to help you. Can't do it by yourself. You have to have those around you to lean on as well.